Welcome to Made in Science, the official podcast of the University of Stuttgart. My name is Wolfgang Holtkamp. I am Senior Advisor on International Affairs and your host. In this episode, we welcome Simon Batzner. His way into academia included some twists and turns, one can say, but a few years ago he came to the University of Stuttgart to pursue his bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering. During his studies in Stuttgart, he spent a year abroad at NASA's Armstrong Flight Research Center in Palmdale, California. There, he worked with the Stuttgart team of the Sophia program, which is the stratospheric observatory for infrared astronomy. After finishing up his degree in Stuttgart, he decided to move back to the United States, where he acquired his master's degree in Computational Science at MIT. His next stop took him down the road, so to say, from MIT to Harvard University, where he started to pursue his PhD in applied mathematics in 2019. In his doctoral research, he focuses on deep learning. Today, we are happy to welcome him in our podcast to talk about how he found his way into science, the differences between German and US American universities, and his exciting PhD research. Hello, Simon.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I just mentioned that you went down the road from one American university to the other. Both are excellent. Actually, how long is that road between MIT and Harvard? Would you know?
I wouldn't know off the top of my head. I've walked it a million times. My guess would be about a mile, maybe 1.5.
Maybe 1.5, something like that. So easily to walk. Now, how long is the way from Stuttgart-Vaihingen to Cambridge, Massachusetts, in your mind?
Longer, quite a bit longer. Few thousand miles.
I guess that would be the case. And how does that feel? Are the two roads equally difficult, equally long for you as you look back?
I think there was definitely a bigger cultural change, of course, moving from Stuttgart to MIT. But then also MIT and Harvard they have a few similarities, but they have very different cultures, I would say. And Stuttgart and MIT were actually both, very technical universities. So in a sense, they're somewhat closer, maybe.
Exactly. It may not be that long after all. Let us talk about your current activities. You have started to pursue your doctoral work in applied mathematics at Harvard in 2019. Can you tell us about your research and the research that you conduct?
Of course, yeah. So the field that we work in is very broadly called computational design of materials. That's a mouthful, but the essential idea is the way that people have designed new molecules and materials over the year has traditionally been one driven by experiment. So scientists would have a hypothesis about what might make a good new molecule, what might make a good new material, and then they would go into the lab and make that material and see, is it what I hoped for? And that is a very, as you can imagine, that's a very sort of time-intensive, very expensive process. And so our goal is to say, well, instead of going into the lab and making the material, can we predict in a computer what properties a potential material or a potential molecule might have? And by that process, can we maybe speed up these predictions by large orders of magnitude, and therefore try a lot more different potential molecules or materials in the computer, and then pick the best ones, hand those off to our experimental colleagues, and then they can make them in the real world. And so the particular focus that we've been pursuing is one based on artificial intelligence, where we ask the computer, to learn patterns from past data. What do molecules behave like? What do materials behave like? and then use that to make very, very fast predictions of how these materials might behave.
Who actually drives these kinds of research? You mentioned the goal of your research already. What about the outcome? Is there a strictly theoretical outcome, or you said you could also go to labs and offer the results to be tested there for other fields? So how interdisciplinary is your research, and how interdisciplinary is the result of your research?
Yeah, of course. I'd say it's highly interdisciplinary. It's actually one of the aspects I enjoy the most about this work, that it really brings together a variety of different disciplines. And I think in order to be successful, you have to sort of, dip your toes into all these different disciplines. And just sort of thinking about our own lab, we have people with backgrounds in physics, in chemistry, in material science, but also in math and computer science. And I think it's really this highly interdisciplinary team that makes this research fun and successful, because obviously you learn from each other.
And how far is doing research at MIT different from doing research at Harvard, if at all? Are there similar approaches or not? Does it matter? A lab is a lab, or the community is the same or different? Where would you say, if there are differences, where are those?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I would say overall the most determining thing is the lab. So that's really the driving factor. But nevertheless, there is a little bit of a cultural difference between MIT and Harvard. I would say the central one is that MIT has a very, very strong focus on STEM. And so, the majority of the people there work on sort of similar things, they work in computer science, math, engineering, and so they speak a similar language. And so that can be a really rewarding environment because there's tons of people that have the same interests as you. And so if you want to go super deep into one particular thing, there will probably be a club for that. There will be a discussion group for that. I remember when I was there, I was part of the MIT Energy Hackathon, which is this team that would organize this hackathon for a weekend where companies would post different challenges that students would then work on for a weekend. And it was purely energy themed, which is super specific, but people flew in for this from all over the country. The nice thing about Harvard is that Harvard has sort of a very, very broad scope, right? Harvard has a famous medical school, a law school, very strong humanities, and so it's not just STEM, right? It's a very sort of diverse community, and that's actually something that I've really come to enjoy when I moved to Harvard. There's sort of a culture where there's just a large variety of people with very different ideas, very different takes on how to live life, and I think that can be quite rewarding too. Yeah.
Now, you yourself seem to be somebody who has an interest in trying various things. Would conclude this because you have acquired a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering and a master's degree in computational science. And how far do those two degrees help you in your current research? And are they as different as I would assume?
No, actually they're quite similar. They don't sound similar in the first second, but I think the really strong underlying thing among all of them is that they're all just sort of applied math. And so that's sort of the reason why I studied aerospace engineering. I had heard, that it was, especially in Stuttgart, it was, lots of math, lots of physics, and I couldn't decide if I wanted to do physics, math, or engineering before starting. And so then someone told me, there's this thing called aerospace engineering, and it's basically just a lot of math. And that kind of sounded perfect to me, and that actually ended up being quite useful because Stuttgart gave me a really, really strong foundation, I believe, in math and fundamental engineering physics, and that's just something that has sort of propagated along the way to these sort of other fields, which ended up actually being quite similar at the end of the day.
And once again, both degrees helped you in your current research. Was the road, we used the word before, was it a direct one? Or was it one where you said, well, I take a little detour here and a little detour there, but I always come back to that main road?
Yeah, so, I definitely didn't have like a clear vision of this is where I need to be in 10 years or and then followed it strictly. I think I always just sort of did what seemed most fun at the time. And then at some point I realized, okay, there is maybe a theme, and it's kind of, I do like math. That's sort of always been true in my life. But along the way, I went to lectures in Stuttgart, and I realized, okay, I really love this professor. And then I emailed, him, can I work with you? It's sort of just, okay, this just seems fun. Let's see what comes out of it. And yeah, I think that's in general, not the worst approach.
Definitely not. You have started, however, very differently. In the introduction, we heard that your way into academia shows how curious you are about various topics, and you have just referred to that as well. Originally, however, you studied medicine for almost 3 years, but then you decided to shift to engineering. What motivated your shift, and can you tell us about that particular process?
Yeah, of course. So I graduated high school quite young, maybe I watched a little bit too much Scrubs. I'm not sure. For some reason, I decided to pursue medicine, and then at some point, it was a good degree. Nothing wrong with it. But at some point, I realized I sort of missed the problem solving and creativity aspects that I was hoping for in college. And I miss sort of, really working through problems by myself, trying to figure something out. And medicine was a lot of memorization, I'd say. I think most med students would agree with me on that. And yeah, so at some point I sort of, I think it was a very personal choice. At some point I realized, okay, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. There has to be something else. And I think I got quite lucky that I stumbled into something second time around, but I stumbled into something that I really ended up loving.
During your studies in Stuttgart, you spent a year in the United States to work with the German team of Sophia. What role did that experience play in your further life in academia?
I think it was a really, really shaping experience, mostly because the team at the Sophia Institute they were just brilliant. They were just really smart people. They were really passionate about their work. And they worked on this crazy project in hindsight. I don't know. I don't think I realized it back then how crazy it was. So for reference, if you've never heard about it, so what the Sophia project is they do what's called airborne astronomy. So they took an old 747 and then they cut a giant hole in it. And then they placed a telescope inside that hole. And so the airplane carries the telescope into the stratosphere, and then it peeks out into the night sky. And as you can imagine, the airplane is shaking and there's vibration, but it's trying to point at this star that's light years away, and trying to focus on that. And that is just such an insane engineering effort to me. And I think in hindsight, I was just really lucky to get to work with those people on such a fun project.
And what we should also mention that the engineering part for that telescope and the last third on that in that plane really is done by University of Stuttgart engineers.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So quite a contribution, and also good cooperation project between the US and Germany. Down on Earth at MIT, you organized quite a few student activities. How important is it to you to give back and support the next generation of scientists?
I think it's a really rewarding process. So before I started doing it, I didn't quite realize how much you get out of it yourself. So sure, there's the altruistic part of it, which is important, but it's also just from a purely egoistic standpoint. It's just a rewarding thing to do, because you learn so much when you explain things to others. You start to reflect upon yourself. You start to reflect upon your own research style. You start to question assumptions you've had the entire time. So I very distinctly remember working with an undergraduate student at some point, advising them on a project, and they asked me a question about something I had done a million times. And only when they asked me that question, I had to explain it to them, I realized, oh, this is what I've been doing this entire time. Like there's these things that you've just always done but never thought about in detail until someone asks you. And I've heard professors tell me the same thing, that, like these senior professors in their 50s, 60s, who teach undergraduate, physics courses, but they say it keeps them sort of, very close to the basics, to the foundations. And I think it's a really crucial part of research.
Have you ever received any feedback from the students on that?
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with a number of students, and so when they leave or when they have questions or something, yeah, of course they give feedback. Yeah, and then I've taught some courses at MIT and Harvard, and there's a very strict feedback system. You get a rating, you get a sort of a grade, and they leave text responses on what you did well and what you didn't do well, and yeah.
Simon, you have experienced university cultures on 2 continents with a lot of contact to people with different cultural backgrounds. What is it that you took or take away from those experiences that you want to implement in your future life in academia?
So I think one thing I took away from working with people, at this university, is that they really like to think big. They like to think. Let's think about the crazy ideas, and things where I think a few years ago I would have said that's not the best idea, but now I'm like, okay, let's try it. And so I think that's really been a major change in sort of mindset for me personally, is that I've realized, sometimes it's a good idea to go for these really crazy ideas, because, what if they work? And so I think that's really a thing I would like to take with me. And I think that might also just be a very general sort of positive American attitude. It's sort of the typical one that they're famous for, and yeah, that's really something I've quite enjoyed.
And from the cultural perspective, would you say the more, I'm not saying the more the merrier, but various influences, various different cultural backgrounds actually contribute to the successful work? Yes,
certainly, without a doubt. Again, sort of just thinking about the people I work with, the people I interact with in classes, they come from all over the world. There's European students from Asia, students from South America, of course, students from North America. It's really, really fun to work with all these different people, learn from them. And they do have very different approaches to work sometimes, yeah.
In your personal or professional career, what do you want to achieve?
I think there's a lot of momentum right now in this field. There's a lot of really exciting stuff happening, and I feel incredibly lucky to sort of be part of this. I think we're really witnessing something special here. And so right now I'm sort of just very excited about the work I do, the work our group is doing, the work others are doing. It's just, right now, honestly, it's just fun, and I just want to keep going, It's just there's so many open questions I still have. There's so many exciting applications I could see this going, and I think it truly has the potential to become something really, really special. This overall research field, and where that takes me personally, I'm not quite sure yet. But I, as I said, right now it's just a ton of fun, and right now I just want to keep going for at least a little bit more time. Yeah.
I certainly hear the passion and the motivation, and the moment seems to be very right for you. This brings us in our conversation to the final part, which we call Moment 7. We have collected 7 questions that we would like to ask you. Please answer as shortly as possible. Moment number 1. Spätzle or Maultaschen?
Spätzle, but only if they're made by grandma.
Moment 2. One thing you could change about the world would be what?
I think equal access to education is something that is really holding us back.
Moment 3. Do you have a book recommendation for us?
My all-time favorite book is The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. It's quite beautiful.
Moment 4. The best advice you have ever received was?
Be present. Don't daydream. Don't think too much about the past. Just be present.
Moment 5. Your favorite place on campus at the University of Stuttgart during your studies was?
There's this little pond or maybe a lake, I don't know, down in Vaihingen where we would go after a big exam to celebrate and watch the sunset, and lots of good memories there.
And another moment 5. Your favorite place at MIT was?
Oh wow, so many. Killian Court and the Boston skyline. That's just very, very beautiful.
And the next moment 5, the favorite place at Harvard is?
Oh, Harvard Yard, without a doubt. It's iconic. It's very beautiful.
Moment 6. Please finish the following line. If I could start all over again, I would do the following differently.
I think I would worry less about grades. Yeah. Still study, still try to understand what's going on, but I think worry a little bit less about grades and just more about long-term learning.
And moment 7. Please complete one of the following sentences. The best thing about Stuttgart is, or the best thing about Cambridge, Massachusetts is.
I will answer it with something that's true for both of them. I think both cities do a very good job of attracting world-class people. And that, I think, makes for a very special city because, you're constantly surrounded by new people with interesting ideas. Yeah.
Simon, thank you so much for having spent time with us today. We are very much looking forward to staying in touch and wish you the best of luck with everything made in science by you and your teams, and whatever you will achieve should be a success and hopefully will be a success. Also in your personal life. All the very best for you, and auf Wiedersehen from Stuttgart.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.